Thanks for talking with me here on this on our now Zoom world that everybody's on.
Yeah.
And honestly, would just love to, there's a new lens to think about um, uh, uh, financial wellness now that everyone has COVID affecting their lives in some way or another. And just curious your take on, there's maybe let's start with just for the purposes of the podcast, who you are, your illustrious career and credentials, and what your take on financial wellness is.
So I have been a financial journalist for more than 20 years. I've written a whole bunch of books behind me on money and real estate and how people can make better, smarter choices with their money, how they can disaster proof their finances. I have written all sorts of things about it. And as you know, I've had a big website, thinklink.com, and now bestmoneymoves.com, which are really, interesting platforms for people to be able to explore their own finances. Best Money Moves is about to have another incarnation where we offer some tools and content directly to consumers for that. But Best Money Moves overall is a financial wellness technology platform. And what I think about financial wellness is that there has been for a long time a group of people who are focused on financial literacy, financial education, and there's nothing more dull than talking about financial literacy. Um, the word literacy is just almost something that I don't think anybody who's under the age of 25 is a word that anybody thinks about except during English class, right? And financial literacy, to me is a highbrow way of explaining basics of money to people. So there's this group that focuses on financial literacy, and then there's another group that focuses on credit and what happens to your credit and how credit affects things. And then there's a group of people who are trying to find ways to help people make the decisions they want to make and get it done. And I would call that this new FinLit group. And so Best Money Moves straddles a bunch of these different worlds, right? We have incredibly easy to use, well-designed tools, thanks to your fabulous team, that people can use to make smarter decisions with their money, measure their level of financial stress, break that out into 15 categories, and then have specific content, information, tools, solutions pushed directly to them. And then there are, but we also have this deep bucket of content that explores and provides answers to everything from what's going on with elder care and how you make those kinds of decisions, to credit, to identity theft, to even relationship issues. So for me, financial wellness is really a total picture of where you are in your life, because everything you do in your life depends on money, right? And you work so hard for it, right? Like you work hard for it, your wife works hard for it. People now have 2 and 3 jobs per household in order to be able to afford just, the basic lifestyle. And COVID just blew everything out of the water, right? It was as if COVID came in and suddenly half of people lost income, half of people are now making less than they were before. And we've seen the great divide of rich and poor in this country get even bigger. And so all the questions that people might have had normally about their money, everything has just been exacerbated by this pandemic that we can't get around.
I'm wondering, I was reading this thing by Richard Dreyfuss from ComPsych and talking about how, employees are getting more and more stressed out and, eating poorly, sleeping poorly, all these kinds of things. Is there a lens about kind of, about consumer behavior that's changed this year about have we picked up new ridiculous bad habits, and are we doing things worse than we used to in some way?
In some ways, we're doing things better. And a lot of that has to do with total fear. Fear is such a great motivator when it comes to money, right? The idea that you're going to not be able to pay your rent or mortgage at the end of the month has sparked a level of savings in this country where we're now saving an average of 33% of our income. We've never done that before. Like, that's just never. I mean, typically we're negative savings in this country, minus 1% to 2%. Or we sometimes in like the last recession got up to maybe 6 or 8% for a while. Part of what's helping that come in is, of course, we can't do anything, right? You can't go out to restaurants and you can't take trips and you can't throw weddings. And the things that we spend our lives on, we can't do it. And then the expenses that we would normally spend, right? Mortgage, student loan debt, which affects 45 million people in the US have student loan debt of some sort. All the federal student loan debt has been on hold till the end of the year. You haven't had to make a single payment. You could have negotiated stuff with your creditors, credit card debt. Mortgage option was out there. Up to 9 million people, 1/5 of all people who held mortgages took a forbearance.
Wow.
Now, of those, 16% continued to make their regular payments. They just took it just in case. But there are still like 5 million, I think, Americans who are still in forbearance with their mortgages. So when you don't have to make all those payments and you're getting an extra $600 a week from the government on top of your regular unemployment, this is why our economy has kind of held together and why so many people have been able to save as much money as they have been able to.
Yeah, that's amazing. So maybe thinking about what are the things people are doing right? It sounds like saving is one of them. Are there things that maybe even beyond the, what people come up with in their normal everyday lives? What are things people should be doing, especially looking into, I know for us, we're looking at, with our business that we're not expecting anything remotely normal for maybe another year. Like what are things people could or should be doing or thinking about?
Well, companies are doing some interesting things. So they did nothing for 6 months other than try to make sure that their people weren't dying from the pandemic, which I think is perfectly appropriate. Frustrating for a company like me that was expecting to do different things this year. But from a personal finance point of view, I think everybody gets that even though their employees are employed, it's likely that their spouse or partner had a furlough, lost a job, got a new job, maybe didn't get a new job yet, right? A lot of people have had that income reduced for households. And so I think companies are more aware of that. I think they're also trying to find different point-based solutions that helps bring more value to their employees. I think there's been a greater recognition that millennials and Gen Z who are now entering the workforce demand balance. And they don't just demand balance with how much they're willing to put in the work, the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 4, or whatever it is. They're also demanding better, more accessible healthcare that's less expensive. They're demanding other kinds of benefits, like, for example, helping pay down that student loan debt. And so companies are finding other ways to bring those different pieces into the puzzle. And what's missing, and where Best Money Moves is really, this is where I think the future of financial wellness is going, is we are a platform that allows companies to take all those different point-based solutions and wrap them together into something that makes sense for employees and employers. So what you can do is focus on, as a company, you want to provide more HR power without spending more money. What you need is technology to help you do that. So Best Money Moves takes all those benefits, wraps them together, and allows employees to self-select because our technology is smart enough to push the right thing to the right person at the right point in time. And the big trend that I see is that the personalization of benefits, the customization of benefits, is what employees will demand over the next 10 years. And right now, HR is set up to provide the same thing to everybody. They're going to have to get a whole lot smarter about how they do that.
Yeah. I'm curious, you brought up, when I think of millennial and Gen Z, I think one of the topics I hear a lot of talk about is how they're purchasing homes at a far lower rate and continuing to rent longer. I'm curious because from your point of view, I know you've written a lot about that. What about, 2021 is home ownership now differently appealing, more appealing because of interest rates or less so because of, uncertainty around the economy? I know I've refied this year to get access to cheaper dollars. What should people think about, especially if you're kind of in that younger age group?
So I had a conversation recently with the chief economist of the Mortgage Bankers Association, and he said that 2020 was one of the best years they've ever had on record for mortgages, and they expect 2021 to be even bigger. And even though there's hardly any homes for sale, the demand is huge. And so that's why prices are up. Prices going up is a real concern for younger people because they typically can't afford as much and they typically have more debt. But when you've got mortgage interest rates under 3% for a 30-year fixed rate loan, and if you can do a 10-year at 2%, it literally is like free money, right? You're literally borrowing at zero cost to yourself. And so there's definitely a recognition in the marketplace that this is a time that's not to be missed. And people like yourselves are refinancing. There's a refinancing boom, and first-time home buyers are trying to get out there. I think if there were more homes to buy, you would see even more people buying them. But people who are more established in their career are finding that they don't really want to trade down. They're still working longer. When you're working longer, you tend to want to stay in your community longer, and you're having kids later anyway. So maybe you're older as they're going off to school and you want them to still have a home to come home to. And so there's a lot of reasons why I think sellers haven't been selling at the rate that buyers want to buy. But I do think that millennials are just about to hit peak home buying years, right? So the average age of a first-time home buyer is about 33-ish, 32 to 34, depending on where you are. So the oldest of the millennials are 38. So they're already in that. But they were so much later in having kids. They were like at 34, 35, that they might have bought a condo, and now they're looking, especially with COVID, which has really pushed people to get more space. Now they're looking to buy a house. And so they're considering other locations that they didn't before to take advantage of low interest rates. But there are about 4 million millennials a year who are going to turn 33, 34, 35. Right. And all of them are going to want to buy houses, is what the Mortgage Bankers Association believes. And I think they're right, looking at the demographic trends. And so the question really is, how do you get those people into houses? And how do you help them as an employer, for example, continue to move forward so that they feel more satisfied with their careers and with where they are financially?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I think as an employer that I've seen, and there have been some big splash sort of news announcements around, I think it was Pinterest got out of their $80 million lease, and people are recommended to move and work elsewhere. I know for me there's some inertia around, well, you have to move downtown and your company has to be downtown, everyone has to be downtown, and kind of like really focusing on the kind of city infrastructure. And wouldn't surprise me if more and more of these that sort of secondary size of a city grows, or suburbs, or move out to the middle of nowhere, because everyone's got everything has internet now, and our lives are at least partially on Zoom. I mean, is that a trend that helps those millennials? Because you could move to Nashville for a quarter of the price of Chicago, for example, or half maybe.
You can. I just don't know if your friends and family will be anywhere near you.
Right. Fair enough.
And there are,
maybe that's part of the appeal.
Absolutely. I think you are seeing that. You are definitely seeing millennials look at far out locations, but will they get what they're looking for? And some of the places that they've been going over the last few years, like Boise, has seen home prices rise as much as 16 to 20% per year. At some point in time, even when you start at a low place, that becomes unaffordable for people. So you get pushed further and further out to rural areas and to the suburbs, and that may be just fine for people as long as they have Wi-Fi. But of course, as we know, you don't have Wi-Fi everywhere in the world just yet. And you still want to have some amenities, things like healthcare. You want to have access to, cities or airports, transportation. One of the things that we've seen with COVID is that even though young people like to travel, American Airlines, Delta, United, they cut a lot of flights or cities out altogether.
Sure.
So you're looking at a changing landscape. And there's one of the things I think people will come to understand is that there's more to living in a community than just a cheap housing price. And we'll see what people think about that.
Yeah. Well, great. This has been terrific. Thanks for the insight on moving toward a little bit better financial wellness. That's great speaking with you as always. And I'd love to check in with you again, maybe early in 2021 to see if any of our thoughts and trends come true here.
You know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey there, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more content just like that.